Kern, who is the owner of Music Therapy Consulting, and she's also an online professor at the University of Louisville and editor-in-chief of Imagine, which is the primary online magazine for early childhood therapy. She's the former president of World Federation of Music Therapy and also currently serves as the CDMT's board of directors. So Dr. Kern is an expert in early childhood music therapy and an advocate for inclusion practices across disciplines. So thank you so much for being here. And then Grace will go ahead and introduce.
And our other lovely guest speaker is Marcia Humpal, MTBC. She holds dual certification in music education and music therapy. She's a graduate of Baldwin Wallace College and Cleveland State University, where she obtained her master's degree in special education and early intervention specialist credential. Since 1986, she has been a music therapist for the Cuyahoga, County Board of Developmental Disabilities in Cleveland, Ohio. Currently, she works exclusively in the early childhood division. She's, what?
Did you retire, Marcia?
I retired.
Yeah, okay, sorry. We're going to throw that in there.
Recently retired, but still strong. She was co-chair of the Early Childhood Network of the American Music Therapy Association and is on the editorial board of Music Therapy Perspectives. Awesome. So thank you, Marcia, for coming and speaking with us too.
And my post-retirement job is at being on the adjunct faculty at Cleveland State, supervising practicum students, and one of them is here tonight.
Marcia.
So yeah, we'll go ahead and turn the floor over to the two of you. Again, thanks for being here.
Okay, so then I'm just gonna get started and lead us into what we're gonna do in this early childhood music therapy virtual cafe. So first of all, I wanna say that I'm really excited to be with all of you. I'm on sabbatical right now, so I haven't seen students for a while, so it's really great to have your faces here again, and also your minds and your thoughts and your innovations. And that's what we're needing right now, because we are all in this together. We all don't know how we're going to continue, but we're all creative and can probably find solutions. And that's what we would like to explore with you tonight. So we would like to introduce to you 7 practices, instructional practices that work with young children, no matter of which abilities. It could be a child with developmental delays, it could be a child with autism spectrum disorder, so along all the different disabilities or typical developing child. So all of those practices are very helpful when you're working with young children. So we want to keep this very hands-on for you. And we both talk about how that was before COVID, when we literally walked into a preschool and we're sitting down on the floor with the children. And then the next step we want to do, we will ask you to brainstorm how could that look like in a telehealth session, which now clinicians started to do the last 8 weeks, I want to say. I just had communication with Rachel Rumbach, who is now in her 8th week of providing music sessions online to large groups, how she's doing with that. So we're gathering all this information, making clear that we don't have any evidence or evidence-based practice behind how we're going to do that. So we are all kind of like trying out as we go. But listen to this, that means there are a lot of research questions probably popping out of this. And those of you who are going to go into master degree programs, you could probably think about what would be a research question coming out of this whole telehealth approach now. So the other thing we want to explore, what if we're going back into a literal, in a real room? How will the new normal look like if we have to do social distancing in a room of toddlers who probably don't understand what it means that you don't hug them anymore, or that they cannot crawl in your lap, and that you probably cannot really sing, which we do so much in early childhood, a cappella singing. I just read a research study yesterday about the aerosol of singers, how far it goes. If I remember right, it was 16 feet. So that's why choirs will be hard to come together in the future, because you can't fit everyone in a room. So all that gave me a little anxiety. How is that going to all work out? And I solutions. we have to be creative, and maybe that also will lead the profession into a totally another stage of we have been before. So that we're doing. And I'm gonna go on share. We have an overview of those 7 practices. But beforehand, Marcia, do you want? Because Marcia, she has the wisdom of everything. So she's my mentor as well. So if I have questions, she's. So Marcia, do you want to add something before I share the screen?
I just think we all need to remember, first of all and foremost, that about the audience that we're discussing, and that is young children, and that young children oftentimes by lay people think, or those of people who aren't working with young children think, oh, they're just little mini adults, or they're mini elementary school students. And I think any of you and all of you who have worked in this field know that that's not really true. Young children are unique. They learn in unique ways. Their brains are developing fast and furiously. They are ruled by a developmental way of growth, but also when we are working with them in music therapy, obviously, not only are we looking at age and typical developmental units, we're also looking many, many times at those conditions that are putting them at risk. And that's how, if we can remediate and really work through some of those things at the early childhood level, these kids are on a much better trajectory for an enhanced life. So the key to me has always been early intervention is key, and that is really, really true. So as we talk to you today, I want you to think in terms of the little people that sit around you that think concretely and not abstractly. They have fairly limited attention spans, but each one is very unique. And Petra's going to start you out, I believe, by going through some of our evidence-based instructional strategies for young children. And we'll be sharing the stage on this. So Petra, take it away.
Yep. Okay. Let me clean this up for you. So you should see now a slide saying instructional practice, making it happen. And there are 7 practices. And the first one is organize the learning environment. The second one is establishing structure, predictability, and routine. Number 3, use of various prompts. Number 4, giving additional response time. Number 5, peer involvement. Number 6, plan for transitions. And 7, generalization strategies. We will address a couple of them and buy them all in, and then brainstorm with you. So I will start out with the first one, organize the learning environment. So when you work with young children, you want to not be in a chaotic room where everything is distracting them. And as Marcia said, their attention span is very small, and so they get distracted very easily, which is, by the way, another good instructional practice to distract from challenging behaviors. But that's not what you want to do if you want them to focus on the music therapy session. So that means you want to define boundaries where they sit, so meaning maybe arrange furnitures or shelves so that you have one area. Usually you're going to be in a preschool and they have a circle time area where you sit down. You also want to mark a spot where the children can sit with a pillow or something. And just to give you a hint, thinking about, how do we do this with social distancing now, that leads actually to something which we do right now when we go to the grocery stores, right? There might be an X taped on the floor where you need to stand. So it's kind of like you can transfer this as well. Think about where are the spots where the children can sit or be in the environment then, so that they have the social distance. Adapt all the physical structures to the children depending on their diagnosis. So you would need to think about sensor-friendly music listening areas or instruments you're going to use, for instance, for children with disability, with autism spectrum disorder, so that they're not going to be distracted by the sound. Think about that. Other things would be label the instruments, the books, whatever you use props in the session, labels, there could be pictures or there could be words. Both would be actually the best in the shelves and everything, so that everything is structured and in order and they can find it, and also you can find it as well. So with those pictures goes the visual cues and the schedules you have probably heard about before. We use usually a visual schedule going through the steps of the music therapy session. And that is something where we engage the children so that they have also under control when we're going from the creating song to the music making, to the listening time, to the movement activity, to the goodbye part. So this is kind of what we mean by structuring the environment. And we have to think about how we will organize this now in a situation, being in a telehealth session or being in a physical room with social distancing. Marcia, are you going to take 2 and 3, please?
Okay, I think those of us that are living in this pandemic right now have figured out that the way to survive a little more seamlessly is to have some structure in our lives. It's very different now, isn't it? It's easy to just wake up in the morning and know you can't go anywhere, at least those of us who aren't students anymore. And we sit around and look at our significant others, or nobody if you're living alone, and think, well, what's going to make today different from tomorrow? And what can I do? Or should I just sit here and watch TV or read a book? So structure. Life is much easier and more easier to get through if we have some structure. It is also easier if we know what to predict and if we have some routines. And the same definitely is true for young children when we are working with them. For instance, when we are setting up our sessions with young children, it's really important that we have consistency in the way the session is structured. I'm a real advocate of using structure boards or routine boards or schedule boards, however you want to put it, with all these little kiddos, because if they can see, if they can get a visual picture of what's going to happen in the session, it helps them understand what's going to be going on and also how much time it's going to take. Because if you are a little child who doesn't really want to be where they are and you're moving around and you don't know what's going to happen and you just want to escape, you're terrified, you aren't learning anything, you're not being helped. Therefore, if you have a schedule board, and sometimes I've used something as simple as taking just a cardboard piece of paper with some Velcro on it and put on that Velcro on the back of a picture, and we'd start out with a picture of a hand, and a hand would indicate we're going to say hello first, then a picture of shaker eggs, and second we're going to play a song with shaker eggs. And then third, maybe we will be tired of sitting, so we have a picture of a parachute and we're going to be up and moving with that parachute. And fourth, maybe we're just going to do some listening. And so we have some scarves, a picture of a scarf that we're going to use when we listen. And then another hand waving goodbye, saying that we end our session with a goodbye song. That structure alone is oftentimes all it takes is to draw a child back into your session and to grab attention. Now, an even better way is to, when you are finished with step 1, the hello song, you let the child pull off that picture so they see what is left. It doesn't have to be a picture on a board. It can be something on their device where they can swipe it off of the screen, or another child could go up to the screen in the classroom and mark through it so they know that part is all done and they're going on to something else. So that structure is one way to help us maintain, hold the attention of the child. Also, when we're structuring our session, we should probably always try to adhere to the 4 basic types of musical experiences that should always be contained therein. Music educators tell us that we should always be using some form of singing. And for those of our children who are nonverbal, that can mean using a device that is voice activated, or that they can push a button to give themselves a meaning to communicate. We should do some form of playing or using instruments or props. Definitely some type of movement, because that helps center children, and some form of listening. So that's a way you could always structure your system, your session. Now, everything is predictable perhaps by using the schedule and by using songs that are repeated throughout, always the same, like your traditional goodbye and hello song each time. Excuse me. But another thing that needs to be predictable is the type of expectations that each session has. Rules need to be set up. And rules, of course, will be structured in ways that the young child can understand. Things that are absolutely not allowed, like hitting, having nice hands, knowing that it's time to sit, for instance. Sometimes we pause and we wait while somebody has a turn, and then it's our turn. We will get a turn, but sometimes that waiting is the important piece. So that knowing to wait, knowing that we will get a turn, knowing that we have rules, that we don't run around the classroom when people are trying to listen. Things like that may need to be taught, may need to be altered depending on the child's abilities, but we need that predictability and structure of rules. Sometimes we need waiting. We need reminders on how to get through these things. More on that in a minute. We need to know that we have, like I said, structure. We need to be predictable. We need to have routines. But one thing that really, really makes this easier is transition songs. And to me, this is the one absolutely essential thing that anybody who works with early childhood should be well versed in. Transition songs are really essential to get a message across quickly and to keep the session flowing. They can be set to a familiar tune, or it can be always developed with an original song. So I'm going to give you a few quick tips on that. For instance, first of all, you've got to decide what message you want to get across. And it might be something as simple as getting an entire classroom of young children to sit down on the floor. So that would be your first step. Okay, I want everybody to sit down. Secondly, we want to say that message in song over and over and over again in a non-threatening way. And remember, it doesn't have to rhyme. It's nice sometimes if it does, but it's certainly not essential. And it should be consistent. So, for instance, sit down is your message. So it could be, everybody sit down, sit down, sit down. Everybody sit down, sit down. Everybody sit down, sit down, sit down. Everybody sit down, sit down. Excuse my voice, I have spring allergies. So anyway, that is a transition song. Anytime you are between activities or songs and you want the child that has been up and moving and the group to sit back down, you sing that song, you keep doing it over and over and over again until everyone is seated, and then you move directly into the next song. We do it seamlessly. We do it as casually as a matter of fact, but we keep it going. So the transition song is your super duper tool for working with young children. One other thing that's nice about a transition song is you can share it with the classroom teachers, the rest of the team, and of course the family. I've had numerous families say to me, this is a godsend. I never could get my child to do such things as come to the table for dinner time, time to go up and get ready for bed. I've even written transition songs for going to the potty, so you can really come up with all sorts of different things. So I think, let's see, Petra, are you taking the next one or am I
I
using
think you wanted to talk about prompts.
the prompts? I'll go right on here. I can't tell by looking at my screen if all of you are seeing me or if you're looking at the instructionals practices slide. So can somebody help me out with that? Because I'd rather be seeing myself. Can you all see me?
We're all seeing.
Go ahead, Grace. Yeah, I can see you in the four square.
Can everybody see me way up at the
Yes,
top?
we can see.
Okay, you can also see the slide too, right? Okay,
Yes.
that's good. Okay, so I'm going to jump down over here to number 3, which says use the verbal gestural model, physical and visual prompts. This is nothing that's new to any of you. You do this all the time. It's probably one of the first things you learned in intro is what is a prompt, what is a cue, all these different things you can do to get the child to do what you want. In early childhood, you may use all of these. You may use just the music itself, which oftentimes is like a transition song, a prompt unto itself. However, sometimes we need to, embellish and make sure we are really being very up close and personal, giving good eye contact. I guess I need to look at my camera here instead of looking at myself in the square, don't I? So we need to really emote. You need to get up close and personal. Just that proximity is also a prompt. But as far as the gestural goes, if I'm singing, everybody sit down, sit down, sit down, I also could be doing, everybody sit down, sit down, sit down, everybody sit down, sit down, and so forth. So I'm giving a sign, which of course is a gestural prompt and a cue. And also we can use, along with the gestures, and we can use the musical and inflection, like stand up, gives the idea with the musical line going up. It reinforces the idea of standing up. So we can add so many different things, so many different prompts, because very rarely, if you're doing a group early childhood class, very rarely will everybody be understanding and prompted by the same thing. You will have various levels of understanding, various abilities, various needs. So you will need to be a jack of all trades and use a lot of different types of prompts. Of course, you can model. Not so easy to model when you are not right in the same room with the people. And I'm going to let Petra talk to you a little bit later about of how we adapt to a non-one-on-one or one group to individual model. But I would like you also to consider that physical prompts obviously aren't going to be easy to do in a virtual environment. If at all they're possible, but the physical prompts are probably the most invasive, and therefore when we're doing them in person, there are many different ways you can figure out to be less intrusive when you're doing a physical prompt. If you're holding a mallet, if you want the child to hold the mallet, here, instead of doing a hand over hand first, you'll basically use the arm, or even better, just the end of the mallet to give a prompt to get going on that in a cue. Little things like that can make the environment just more casual, more matter of fact. It's important to keep the prompts and cues you use consistent with what the family or the team are doing. Very confusing to a child if he is or she is being prompted one way at one setting and not the same in another. So let's see, keep it short, keep it simple. In prompting and cueing, if we're giving verbal, one thing I find with practicum students that I supervise, I have a tip sheet that I give them usually at the beginning, tips from a practicum supervisor that I tend to say all the time. And the first one is Too much talk may crowd my head, try a little cue instead. This is especially true with young children because consider music. Music has both notes and rests. It has both sound and silence. Therefore, we don't need to always be saying, okay, first thing you need to do is blah, 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 blah. Just stand up, play. And then you have a pause to give time for a response. If you don't have that time for response, you may miss, if you don't have that pause and that silent period, you may miss a response. That is very, very important to give that pause, that wait, so the response can come. It doesn't do any good to prompt over and over and over again in several different ways if the pause or the wait isn't there for the response. And make it musical. The music can give the cues in prompts in so many ways. For instance, if we're going, that would be your model. Tap, 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 stop. Tap, 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 stop. Tap, 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 stop. I've changed it slightly, but I've set up the way you can be modeled it. You can model it. You can just listen to the verbal tap, tap, tap. And the music has told you, oh, the stop might not come right then. I modulated and made the music different, and then I could add stop. So there are many different ways that you can prompt, and you can make it musical, and you can make it much richer. I do want to pop down to number 4 and to make sure I tell you to give enough response time and opportunities to repeat things. Young children learn through repetition. I believe I have read somewhere that you must repeat, a child must repeat something at least 4 times before they really embed that. That's why so many children's songs are repeated so many different times within the verses and the refrains. And therefore you as music therapists will never just come in a session and do all new songs. You will repeat some from the previous week or the previous day or how many oftentimes you see the children. So repeat, 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 repeat. Give time for response. Pause and wait. And that also sets up anticipation, which has another great purpose. It pulls the children in and gathers their attention again. So on to you, Petra.
All right. So I just want to go back on a couple of things Marcia just said to give you some ideas for telehealth sessions or for the new normal sessions, whatever they will look like. But looking at number 4, where Marcia said giving additional response time and repeat, I think that's especially necessary when we do telehealth sessions. You might have lag time. So giving that extra time so that your client can actually respond is super important, or repeating it over and over so that they get what you're actually going for in the session. It's important to think about this, to build this in when you structure it. Also, thinking about the transitioning, Marcia talked about transition songs. So I was thinking about what if we cannot really do so much singing anymore? So maybe what you also can use is just musical cues, like we do, you know, with the train whistle, or you could use a triangle for certain things so that children then know if they hear that sound, we're going to the next action in the session or something like that. So think along those lines. Thinking about the prompts, Marcia said that physical response will be physical prompts will be hard when you're here on the screen, but think also about family-centered practice and family capacity building, meaning you can always have the caregiver being the person who helps out. In a way, it's, if you have learned about Northrop Robbins music therapy, it's like that model where you are the therapist providing the music, and the co-therapists are the caregivers or whoever is with that child, parents, and they can help with the hand over hand or, you know, giving that physical prompt or so forth. Visual prompts, I think, will be super important because that's what we all see. It's all around here right now, here on the screen, right? But I think you can also make it a little bit more interesting by bringing in puppets. One of the favorites, which I tried the last couple of weeks when children were here on the screen, is Olivia. Wait, I get her. So you can do a whole puppet show. If you have Olivia talking, oops, where is she? Here. Everyone is looking, and if she's dancing, you know what I mean? So you can bring just interesting things in where children also respond to and interact with. All right. Time is moving, so I want to move you into thinking by yourself what you can do. And what we want to do is now to give you some, structure of what to think when you're going into the breakout sessions. So think about the first 4 things we talked about, arranging the environment, the prompts, and so forth. How would you do that in a telehealth session? And then how would you do this in a room when you have to think about social distancing and can't come close to each other? I'm saying, think about technology in interactive media. How can you build that in? Think about family practice, which I just mentioned. How can the caregivers be your helpers, your assistants? And how can you make this as natural as possible? All right. Before we send you, Nicole, I think, sends you into the breakout sessions for, let's say, 5 minutes. Do you have any questions? No? All right. So it's clear, right? Think about the first 4 instructional practices and how would you modify them to telehealth or the new normal. And we see you back in 5 minutes. Nicole, would you split the group up, please?
Yep, give me just 1 second. I'll move everyone to breakout rooms. Would you like to go into one of the breakout rooms as well?
Sure.
Oh, okay.
Or do you need a pause? Marcia, do you need a break?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay, I'm gonna send everyone over now. Okay, welcome back, everyone.
Everyone is back here.
Where did everybody else go? Oh, she's bringing.
Yeah, so they are still coming. They have 20 seconds before they'll be kicked out on their own. And they have, I don't know if you all saw the little timer in the top, said this breakout room will close in 17 seconds or whatever.
Oh.
So we have a few more seconds to make their way back.
I gotta figure out how to do those breakout rooms, Naomi. They're pretty.
show
They're
you.
pretty slick.
Yeah. I'll show
Lead
you.
me, sensei.
So it looks like everyone is back, huh? We have about 10 minutes left, if I'm correct, Nicole. So we could either now share from each group kind of like the top-notch idea you had, or we can open it up for questions. What would you like to do? Hand ups for top-notch ideas. Hand ups for questions. Okay,
Yes.
so then we'll leave it there and we open it for questions. Now you have to ask questions. You can also put them in the chat room, I guess, you know, so everyone can have a question and we're gonna pick.
Grace?
I had a question. So
I saw that little hand go up. I thought that was pretty cool. Is that how you?
it's under the reactions. It's kind of my
Oh, is
favorite
it?
thing,
I like
especially the thumbs up one. Sorry, but anyways, my question was, I had we had a really hard time with a preschool group in like 2 and 3 year olds with getting them to like get in a line or do anything like that. Do you have any tips with how to just organize for one focused goal with very scatterbrained 2 and 3 year olds?
First of all, I don't think it's developmentally appropriate to expect a 2-year-old to stand in a line. It's kind of hard to get kindergartners to always stand in a line. But I've seen teachers put little feet on the floor, cut out feet and put it on the floor. Those stretchy rope thingies where you can, the bungee cords, you can put the children, hang on to those. They all have to hang on to something as they walk. What's the intent for being in the line?
Well, this is the thing, Marcia. I think we were probably thinking a little too high for them at that point. But we wanted them to line up so that they would each get their turn to strum the guitar for the goodbye song. So
okay, that I would say they have a very quickly, you could arrange carpet squares or their chairs, or you could just, have them in an order. And as soon as they get the turn, they go back to their chair or if you're dismissing the group and you're in a classroom, then they can go back to to a different center where they're going. And that eliminates some of that crowding and chaos right there. As soon as they're done, they go to they're done. They're really done with music. They go back to the housekeeping center or the art area or something like that. But I'd say mark your environment, okay? Don't expect them to stand in a line. If they do, they're gonna be popping each other in the head or something. Good question though. I gotta learn how to do this. I gotta learn how to do these little emojis sticking up and everything.
So there was a question in the chat from Livia, and it is, do you have any tips for replacements to sensory stimulation and interventions due to telehealth / social distancing?
So I think Jeff can probably talk about this because we brainstormed this very briefly while he was doing some video games. We were talking about different alternative realities and so forth, which we have not used in music therapy yet, where you could actually experience, you know, different things. Jeff, do you want to talk about this?
Is he here?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you see me, Marcia?
There you are.
Yeah, I mean, if Petra, do you want me to go into the AR stuff and the VR?
Very quickly, just give an
Okay,
idea.
very quickly. Yeah, we were talking about how to use have that tactile stimulation occur over video and things like that. So we have alternate reality. So for instance, some things we have been doing is getting, without going too in depth in the AR, is having parents use combs or other objects to simulate cabasas and things like that. And then that could eventually be projected into augmented reality that we could use through different software. And briefly with VR, we're trying to figure out how to go that direction and implement music therapy where you play in the air or different objects in that virtual world so that you can co-create with another music therapist in that virtual reality space. So for, again, sensory stimulation, interventions, and things like that, I think that could really help to then generalize the practice that you're doing in those settings to then to the home site.
Yes, and I think there are many things we can do which we have not explored yet in music therapy. But, you know, on the low-tech side, again, think family practice and just make the caregivers or whoever can be close to the children, just instruct them how to do it and model.
I think that becomes much easier actually with toddlers and adult child groups, because you do have that one-on-one there. And you don't have to worry so much about that seamless transition piece, because you've got that physical holding or that touch, or they can keep the child going in one place. So there's nothing wrong with, while you're doing your session, to just say, okay, grandma, you know, pick up your child's hand and let's clap together or something like that. There's nothing wrong with that, because it's instructional, because you are back actually leading the group from afar. You are not technically interacting with that child. You're leaving it to the caregiver to do the interacting actually. And you're just the prompter up there. So that's another way to like spread your expertise.
Yeah, I think you need to see yourself more as a facilitator of the session than being, you know, in direct contact with your client in terms of hands-on.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean that you will not have a therapeutic relationship with your clients when you're on the screen.
Right.
Okay. And it's the same, like, you know, I have never seen you in my life, but I feel I can connect with you anyway, especially when we are in smaller groups in the breakout rooms, right? And we can have a discussion and continue so on. I haven't seen Jeff since November, since the conference. And yes, we can have immediately good conversations. So it doesn't mean just because you're on the screen, you're losing that element, which is so important to music therapy, of a therapeutic relationship.
And so much can be given to you by the smiles that you see on the screens. I mean, to me, seeing your smiles and your feedback is essential for us to give to you. So know that that works two ways. If you're being very, very, very expressive in your facial move and your in all your the way you're looking at people and your facial expressions and your movement and your vocal quality and the musicianship within your speech, that also sets up the relationship with the persons you're working with. I feel like you all are doing this. So it's just reiterating the things you already know. I mean, there's a lot of expertise in this group already, obviously.
Yes, and I just want to add this on because I think at least for me, I have not thought that through yet too much. What if we're going back in a room and we're all gonna wear masks? And for years, we have taught the students and also your clients, you're reading the lips, you're reading, if this is happy, if this is sad. If you can't see this anymore, you just see the eyes, how are we gonna get that information, I think we have to think that through. There are masks now where you have, where you can see your mouth, but I don't know how they're gonna be if you sing, if you're kind of like, if it's gonna be foggy or not. So there are things we have to think about, or maybe we could have like the medical people in there, when they're going into the COVID units, they have those helmets on with the plastic shield. Maybe we could have something like that and sing this way. Or we really need to think of not singing so much anymore, using more our iPads, digital devices. That's why I said think interactive media, where we have a touch screen and we can have digital instruments where we can wipe them better off and so forth. So I think all of that, maybe we have to do kind of like a music therapy session with a plexiglass wall in between us and just look into the room and stand behind while being still in the room. You know what I mean? Like some people have it now at the grocery stores, or where the cashiers are and they're behind a plexiglass wall. Maybe we have to do something like this. I have no idea. We all have to find it out.
Yeah, Petra, drum shields would work well for that.
Oh, yeah. But I think what would be the most difficult thing for me is with young children is, there is this physical touch of hugging each other and sitting on one's lap. And how are you going to tell a toddler, you cannot come close to me? So maybe we have to think about also more behavioral things like musical cues, or, like a car, when you get too close to another object, it starts to beep. So maybe we have to have some digital devices around us which start to beep when we're getting too close to each other. Or I have seen those headwears in Japanese schools where the children have those balloons on, which are that far. And so if they're moving, they're touching other people. And so they know they cannot get closer. So we have to be creative. I think that's the message. And see the creativity in being a new opportunity of doing things different and maybe better.
I think another thing we have to consider is when singing, how much that can be infective. I read an article today where a choir rehearsed and all but 4 of the people, 14, and within 14 days were infected, even in a fairly spread out way. That's really frightening. The last thing we want to do is to infect young children and get it's very scary but when you sing, think of how much we are projecting more than when we are just talking. So there's so many considerations and so many changes that going to be the topic of many a CBMT course, Petra.
Yes, and that is actually just what I wanted to say as a representative of the CBMT board. One thing which is the top priority for board certified music therapists is safety. That's actually the first point on the domains which you're gonna see, which we just actually put on top there, always on the bottom. But they're number 1 now, safety. And my goodness, how has that become now a risk of singing? Who would have thought that singing could be a risk? And so what is the safety aspect here? And are we really, the number 1 people who need to provide services right now? And if so, how are we going to do that to keep everyone safe and yourself as well? So safety should be number 1.
Yeah.
So I think telehealth is pretty safe. I like that. Can wipe my screen afterwards. Yeah. And then with the telehealth, just to mention that again, well, that is actually where we do have research, because telehealth is really around since 20 years. And one thing is just that many people don't have the devices at home. The families might not have the financial background to have that iPad and fancy Mac computer we all have and so forth. And so I think that's where advocacy starts, where you probably need to think about writing grants, getting materials for your clients, sending out the packages, even with a little music instrument package, whatever, and then do it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's all I have.
Lynn, did you have a comment? I saw your screen go on. Lynn?
No, I don't. Sorry.
Okay.
I was just listening.
Okay. Actively listening.
Well, I'm an older student, so my background is in music education and working in an early childhood setting. So a lot of what you're saying is very familiar and very reassuring.
Well, I think we learn a lot from our music educator cohorts and our colleagues, definitely, because you've been doing it. I think the music ed scene was ahead of music therapy in recognizing and differentiating between early childhood and just young children. So I'm glad you find it reassuring, because we find it reassuring to hear that from you.
Okay, Nicole, are you wrapping this up, or is
Yes, yeah. I just want to see if there are no
final word?
Naomi, right?
Yeah.
I want to make sure we get our right names here. Naomi.
Yes, Naomi. Well, yeah, thank you both so much for coming out and chatting with us. If you could all give them a round of applause, either like this or with your little reactions button in the corner. But thank you so much for being here with us tonight and sharing your wisdom with us. For those of you who are interested, we will have more of these cafes on various topics coming throughout the rest of this month and the beginning of June. We have a couple next week on Tuesday. We'll have Jane Cregan from AMTA joining us to talk about CVMT and what's happening due to COVID-19. And then next Wednesday, we'll also be having one on improving improv. So feel free to join us for those. The links to sign up for those are also on our Facebook page, and you can register for those there. So thank you all so much, and I hope you have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thanks for hosting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Petra. Thank you, Marcia.
You're welcome. Thanks for having us.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.